Imagine you get left out of your family Christmas. Then they send you an invoice for $61,000 for your sister's car. You feel shocked. You feel angry. You want to know what happens next. If you like this story, please give it a thumbs up and drop a comment. Please do not subscribe to the YouTube channel for more revenge stories like this. Here is a quick look at our main character. She is Jessica. She is 34 years old now. She has lived through many hard times and happy times. Jessica grew up in a big white house in Maple Ridge Estates. Her parents, Robert and Linda, were always busy. Her sister, Amanda, was smart and bold. Jessica felt both love and pain at home. She learned to be quiet and helpful. She learned to keep her head down and smile. For years, Jessica worked at a small bakery in the town of Willow Creek. She woke up early. She mixed dough and baked bread. She watched the sun rise through the big kitchen window. It was peaceful. It was calm. Yet she felt lonely at times. She dreamed of a family dinner full of laughter. She dreamed of hugs by a warm fire. On one cold December morning, Jessica got a message. It was from her mom's email. It said, "Family Christmas at our house on December 25th. Dinner at 6 p.m. But when she opened the email, she saw her name was not on the guest list. It was not on the invitation. Everyone else had their name in neat letters. Everyone except her. Her heart sank. She read it again, hoping for a mistake. But it was right. They did not want her there. Jessica tried to call her sister. She texted her, "Hey, did you get the invite?" "I did not see mine." Amanda did not reply. Hours passed. No reply. Jessica felt tears come to her eyes. She thought of all the times she helped her sister with homework, with chores, with school projects. She felt confused and sad. That night, Jessica could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She thought of every way to fix things. She even thought of showing up uninvited. But she stopped. She did not want to seem weak. She wanted them to know her worth. She wanted them to feel her pain. The next day, the bakery was busy. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon rolls filled the air. Jessica smiled at the customers. She sold a loaf to Mrs. Parker and waved at Mr. Lewis. She weighed pastries and wrapped cookies. She tried to keep busy. She tried to ignore her heart. During her lunch break, she checked her mailbox. A big brown envelope was inside. It was not from her family. It was from a law office. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Inside was a paper invoice. It said, "Charge for repair and upgrade a vehicle. Amount due, $61,000. Payable within 30 days. She read it again. $61,000. $61,000 for her sister's car. She blinked and read her own name at the top. It was billed to Jessica. She stared, feeling the room spin. How could she owe that much money for a car she never touched? Her sister's old blue sedan had a few scratches, but it ran fine. She had never driven it. She never lent it out. Jessica felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over her. Her own family was treating her like a bill collector. She went back to work, clutching the paper in her hand. She tried to focus on kneading dough, but every time she pressed the soft bread, her mind saw the big number, 61,000. She pictured her empty bank account. She pictured the scary phone calls she would get if she could not pay. She felt tears come again. After her shift ended, Jessica walked slowly home. Snow lay on the street corners. The sun was low, and the sky was pale orange. She hugged her coat tighter. She thought of her mom's soft voice and her dad's loud laugh. She thought of her sister's teasing smile. All the memories felt heavy and bitter now. At home, she pulled the invoice from her coat. She pinned it to the notice board over her desk. She looked at it under the lamplight. It glowed like a threat. She took out a notebook and wrote a list. She wrote down ideas for a reply. She wrote down steps to gather proof. She wrote down a plan to set things right. Jessica knew she could not let this go. She would find out who sent the invoice. She would find out why. She would make them answer. She would make them see her strength. She would teach them to be kind. That night, she dreamed of a big red mailbox at her family's house. She held a letter inside. She pressed down hard on the stamp that said revenge. She felt her heart beat fast as she slipped the letter inside. The door snapped shut behind her. She woke up in a sweat, her pillow damp. The next day, she drove to the law office. The receptionist was polite but firm. She asked to see the file. She learned the invoice came from a car shop at the edge of town. She saw the work order. It showed repairs, new tires, a paint job, and extra lights. All for Amanda's old blue sedan. All billed to Jessica. Jessica paid the receptionist for copies. She left with a thick folder and a heavy heart. She drove past the bakery. She drove past the big white house in Maple Ridge Estates. She felt a gust of wind as she sped by. She gripped the steering wheel tight. She had what she needed. Back home, she pored over every line in the work order. She circled dates and scribbled questions. She called the car shop. They repeated the same story. Your sister brought the car in. You signed the paperwork. Jessica felt like shouting. She knew it was a lie. She knew they must be in on it with her family. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of hot chocolate. The steam curled up like a ghost. She sipped slowly. She thought of her plan. She would invoice them back. She would send a bill for all the time she had helped. She would show how they owed her more than they could ever pay. Slowly, a small smile formed on her lips. She knew this was just the start. She would play by their rules. She would use paper, pens, phone calls, and stamps. She would turn the game around. She would show that kindness can be a weapon when you wield it right. Later that evening, she printed a thick stack of letters. Each one was a bill. One for every time she had babysat Amanda. One for every ride to school. One for every quiet time she spent fixing tears and broken toys. One for every holiday gift she had bought when their parents had no money to spare. The total at the bottom added up to far more than $61,000. Jessica stacked the letters and slipped them into bright red envelopes. She wrote her family's names on each. Robert and Linda, Amanda. She drew a small star next to each name to get their attention. Then she drove back to Maple Ridge Estates under the cover of darkness. Snowflakes drifted down softly. She pulled up at the big white house. Her heart pounded. She opened her trunk and took out the envelopes. She walked to the side door. She slid the first envelope under the mat. Then the next. Then the next. The red envelopes lay in a neat row. They glowed under the porch light. She backed away slowly. She felt a rush of power. As she reached her car, she heard a loud crack. It sounded like ice breaking. She looked up. The large icicle hanging over the porch shook. Then it fell as a huge shard of ice. It swung down fast, heading straight for the front door. Jessica's eyes widened. She froze for a moment, and then the icicle crashed through the door glass with a thunderous smash. Shards flew everywhere like rain. Jessica jumped back as the icy wind whooshed through the hole in the door. She heard a scream from inside. It was Amanda's voice, high and sharp. The night was broken by the sound of glass. Jessica's heart raced. She stood in the dark, the red envelopes at her feet, and the wind howling all around. She did not move. She did not speak. This was the moment of the extreme event, the moment that would change everything. Jessica froze as the ice shard shattered the door glass. Amanda's scream cut through the night like a knife. Cold wind rushed in and swirled around the porch. Thin glass pieces lay on the steps. Jessica's heart pounded so loud she thought everyone in the street could hear it. She stood under the yellow porch light. The red envelopes were at her feet. Her breath came in quick puffs. Inside the house, she heard footsteps on the wooden floor. Someone was coming. Jessica wanted to run. She wanted to hide. but her legs felt like stone. A soft light shone through the broken door. Jessica peered in. Amanda, pale and shaking, held the broken glass frame. Her long hair was tangled. She stared at Jessica with wide eyes. "Jess!" Amanda's voice was small. "What are you doing here?" Jessica lifted her chin. She looked at the red envelopes by the doormat. She took a slow step forward. "I came to talk," Jessica said. Her voice was calm but low. "I came to talk about the invoice." Amanda backed up inside the hall. She tripped on a slipper and caught herself on the wall. The hallway light clicked on. Robert and Linda stepped into view behind her. They both looked tired and dressed in pajamas. "Why do you have those envelopes?" Linda's voice shook between anger and fear. Robert's eyes were hard. "You broke our door." Jessica's eyes flicked to the jagged glass. "The ice did that," she said softly. "I did not mean to hurt the door. I only wanted you to get these." Amanda dropped the glass frame and wiped her hand. "Get what?" she said. Jessica knelt and picked up the first envelope. She held it before her like a shield. "These are bills. For everything I ever did for you." She slipped the first envelope under the doormat again. Then she stepped back. The wind rattled the envelopes. Each red flap hid a list of hours and gifts and rides and time spent. Jessica watched her family's faces grow tight. Robert took a shaky breath. "Jessica, this is not the way." Jessica shook her head. "It is the way you chose when you sent me that invoice." Linda put a hand to her mouth. Tears glinted in her eyes. "This is too much." Jessica stood tall. "You billed me for my sister's car. You left me out of Christmas. That was too much for me." Amanda looked down at her feet. "I'm sorry," she said in a hush. "I did not mean to hurt you." Jessica's chest tightened. She saw hurt in Amanda's eyes, but she also saw guilt. She saw regret. Outside, the wind blew harder. Snow swirled around the porch. The red envelopes fluttered like flags in a storm. Jessica felt the night press in on her skin. She felt small under the porch light. She felt big with power. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Robert moved forward and grabbed the first envelope. He tore it open. He read the first line. He read the hours and the dates. His face changed from confusion to shock. "How many hours?" he asked. 500 hours of babysitting." He looked at Linda. "I never knew." Linda opened the next envelope. Her tears fell as she read. "You drove us to school every day," she whispered. "You helped paint my art project." Amanda took the third envelope and read it. She pressed it to her chest. "I owe you," she whispered. "So much." The wind blew a swirl of cold air across the hall. Jessica held the last envelope for her sister. Her heart slowed. She thought of every gift. Every time she stayed up late mending torn shirts. Every pancake she made on Saturday mornings. "I do not want money," Jessica said softly. "I only wanted you to know. I wanted you to feel what it is like to be left out, to get a bill instead of love." Her mother's shoulders shook with sobs. Her father stifled a cry. Amanda's hand trembled as she held the letter. They stood in the hall, framed by broken glass and red envelopes. Outside, the snow was heavy now. The wind howled. Then, the front step cracked beneath their feet. The old wood groaned like it would give way. Jessica felt the boards move under her boots. She glanced down and saw a long crack running across the step. Linda gasped. Robert took a step back. Amanda stumbled. Jessica grabbed her sister's arm. "Watch out," she called. The step burst apart with a loud crack. A huge section of the wood floor fell away. A cold black hole yawned where the porch had been. Snow tumbled through the gap and into the dark space. Amanda let out a scream and clutched Jessica. Linda cried out and stumbled forward. Robert wrapped his arms around his wife. Jessica knelt and reached toward the hole. The wind roared up from below, cold and wild. She saw broken beams where the step collapsed. She saw dark earth beneath the porch. She pulled her sister back. "It's not safe," she shouted. "We need to move." But the wind grew stronger. It pushed snow and shards of glass into the hall. Curtains snapped against the walls. The light bulb above them swung wildly on its wire. Then the electricity blinked out. Darkness fell. Only moonlight and snow shadows danced through the broken door. Jessica's heart pounded like a drum. She gripped Amanda's hand. Her breath was loud in the dark. Something moved in the shadow beyond the hallway. A shape slid along the wall. It was tall and thin. It did not seem human. It made a soft scraping sound on the wooden floor. Jessica froze. She squeezed her sister's hand. Amanda squeezed back. The scraping grew closer. It stopped at the edge of the light circle from the broken door. Jessica could see only a dark shape. Then the front window behind them exploded outward. Glass flew into the room like rain. A burst of wind and snow sprayed inside. Jessica screamed. The shape in the hallway lurched forward into the light. The broken window sent a rush of icy air into the hall. Glass shards danced like falling stars. The dark shape lurched forward under the moonlight. Jessica's heart pounded so loud she thought it might burst from her chest. "Stay back," she yelled, but her voice shook. The shape stepped into the light. It was tall and thin, wearing a long coat and a hood. Its face was hidden in shadows. It moved with slow, steady steps, as if it knew exactly where it was going. Amanda pressed herself against Jessica. Linda and Robert stayed huddled in the dark beside the collapsed step. Snow whirled through the broken door and window, piling on the floor like a white blanket. Jessica stepped forward a little, trying to protect her family. The shape slid a hand out of its coat pocket. Jessica tensed, sure it held a weapon. But when the figure raised its hand, it held an envelope, bright red, like the ones Jessica had left under the mat. For a moment, time froze. The shape reached forward and dropped the envelope on the floor. Then it took a slow step back, turned and melted into the night outside. Jessica looked down at the envelope. She bent to pick it up and spotted the writing. "To Jessica from Amanda." Her breath caught. She knelt and slid off the coat sleeve that was stuck on a shard of glass. The hall was cold and dark, and her knees felt shaky. Why would Amanda leave me a letter? Jessica whispered, though Amanda was right beside her. Amanda swallowed, her face pale. She stepped into the shard light and placed her hand on Jessica's shoulder. "That wasn't me," she said softly. "I didn't send that." Jessica looked up at her sister. "Then who?" A low creak came from the ceiling above. Everyone raised their heads. The upstairs floor groaned as if something heavy moved across it. Thin cracks appeared in the ceiling light fixture. "I think someone's up there," Robert said, his voice tight. Linda grabbed Amanda's arm. "Who is messing with our house?" The wind slammed a blast of snow through the broken window. Curtains billowed like sails. The red envelope fluttered on the floor, shaking in the cold draft. Jessica stood, holding the envelope close. She took a deep breath. "We need to see what's in here," she said. "Then we can figure out what's happening." Amanda nodded and took Jessica's hand. Together, they knelt beside the envelope. Jessica opened the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The handwriting looked familiar, neat and looping. Amanda gasped. "It's my handwriting." Jessica read aloud, her voice steadying. "Dear Jess, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what they were planning. Please meet me at the old barn on Pine Lane tomorrow at 5 p.m. I'll explain everything. Love, A." Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. "I wrote that," she said, voice tight. "I wrote it last week." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't you send it?" Amanda shook her head, tears glinting. "I was scared. I thought they would hurt you if they found out I wrote it." Linda wrapped her arms around Amanda. Robert knelt beside them. Jessica felt a lump in her throat. She looked at the collapsed step, the broken door and window, the glass on the floor. The house felt like a trap. Upstairs, the creaking grew louder. Heavy footsteps stomped across the ceiling, then stopped above their heads. A single floorboard cracked. Dust fell like rain from the ceiling. "That's enough!" Jessica shouted, voice echoing in the hall. "Who's up there? Show yourself!" Silence answered. Then a soft clicking sound came from the direction of the stairs. The front door rattled as snow piled against it from outside. No one moved. Outside, the wind died down. The night grew still. Then, faintly from across the lawn, came a car engine starting. The sound was distant but clear. A car rolled forward, and its headlights swept across the front of the house. The beams caught the broken window and a row of red envelopes inside. Robert squinted toward the window. "They're back." Jessica's heart lurched. The car drove slowly past the yard and stopped at the end of the driveway. Its lights cut the darkness in half. The engine idled. Then the silhouette of someone slipped out of the driver's seat and walked toward the front door. A second figure followed. Both wore heavy coats and hats pulled low. Their breath made small clouds in the cold air. Jessica's pulse raced. Amanda whispered, "Mom, Dad, what do we do?" Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "We hide." Robert grabbed his wife's hand and gently pulled her back into the kitchen. Amanda and Jessica edged behind the broken door out of sight. Their eyes peered around the frame. The two figures reached the porch. One bent to pick up the red envelope on the step. The other shone a flashlight inside, sweeping over the shattered door and the empty frames. Jessica held her breath. The snow crunched under footsteps. The flashlight beam froze on the envelopes, then on the broken glass. Then it swung toward the door and caught Jessica's eyes. She gasped and tried to retreat, but her foot hit a shard of glass. It cut her ankle and she let out a small cry. The beam snapped toward her. "Hey," one figure called. "Someone's in there." The other figure stood and aimed a flashlight at Jessica and her sister. The light was blinding. Jessica squinted and saw their faces under the light. Two strangers with cold eyes. Her heart thundered. She knew they were not her family. She knew this was far worse than anything she had faced. She had stepped into a trap bigger than the invoice, bigger than the broken door. One stranger moved forward, shining the light across the hall. Their boots crunched through the snowfall on the porch. The other began to lift the broken window frame, creaking it aside. Jessica grabbed Amanda's hand. Her mind raced. She thought of the barn on Pine Lane. She thought of the meeting note. "We have to get out," she whispered fiercely. "Now." But before they could move, the strangers stepped into the house. The one with the flashlight reached out to grab Jessica's arm. The cold metal of a badge clicked against her skin. "FBI," the stranger said. "Hands where we can see them." Jessica's blood ran cold. She stared at the badge, then at her sister, then at her parents behind her. And then a deafening boom shook the house. The porch floor gave way under one of the agents. The light swung wildly. Glass rained down. Dust filled the air. Then the front wall cracked with a loud rumble. The house shook again as the front wall cracked wider. Dust rained down like gray snow, and bits of brick tumbled into the hall. One of the FBI agents stumbled backward, crashing into the broken window frame. He fell through the hole in the porch floor with a shout, disappearing into the darkness below. The second agent spun around, flashlight beam dancing wildly on the walls, and pointed a gun at Jessica and her sister. Jessica's heart pounded, so hard she thought it might break free of her chest. She pressed herself against the jagged edge of the broken door frame, her hand still gripping Amanda's. The air felt heavy with dust and fear. She saw the agent's boots scrape on the broken step and heard him shout into his radio, "Unit 2, I need backup. Suspects inside. Possible structural collapse." The beam of the flashlight fell on her parents huddled in the kitchen doorway. Linda's eyes were wide with terror, and Robert wrapped his arms around her. Warm tears ran down Linda's cheeks, mixing with the cold dust. Amanda squeezed Jessica's hand until it hurt. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the faint squeal of the radio crackling. Then the agent turned his beam toward the interior of the house. Behind him, the broken porch floor creaked as snow and debris shifted in the hole. Footsteps above them began again, heavy and slow. The agent barked an order. "Stay where you are. Do not move." Jessica took a deep breath. She lifted her free hand and held it out. "We are not dangerous," she said, voice shaking but clear. "We are just a family." The agent's finger tightened on the trigger. His flashlight swung to her face. Jessica felt the bright beam burn her eyes. She blinked and saw his mouth move, trying to understand. Then a new voice came from the radio. "Agent Collins, do you copy?" The balcony gave way. "We found Agent Baker in the basement. He's hurt but alive." The agent's face went pale. He glanced down at the broken floor. Outside, the wind rattled the broken window pane, and snow drifted in small piles. Jessica's mind raced. She knew this moment could decide everything. She had to get her family out safely. "Yes," the agent said into his radio. His voice was lower now, less sure. "We have 2 suspects. I need medical and structural support." Jessica nodded. "Please let us help," she said. "My father is handy. He can keep everyone safe until help arrives." The agent looked at Robert. Robert stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "I can help," he said. "I was an engineer before I retired. I know how to shore up weak floors." The agent's gun lowered by a fraction. He glanced at the broken wall and the hole in the porch. Then he looked at the family's faces. Fear and relief mixed in their eyes. "Fine," he said, "but stay here in the hall. Do not go anywhere else. And keep your hands visible." Robert and Linda moved back into the hall, leaving Jessica and Amanda by the door. Jessica stayed very still, breathing slowly. She felt the cold air on her face and tasted dust in her mouth. The agent radioed again, then took out his phone and dialed. A few minutes later, distant sirens wailed. The lights of police cars spun red and blue on the street. A fire engine arrived and parked across the lawn. Firefighters jumped from the truck, carrying lights and tools. Medical personnel unloaded a stretcher. Jessica watched as firefighters walked onto the broken porch. They knelt to help Agent Baker, who lay on the broken floor below. He groaned and pressed his hand to his side. The firefighters lifted him gently and carried him up the steps into the kitchen where Robert and the agent stood. One firefighter glanced at Jessica and Amanda. "Everyone okay?" he asked, voice calm. Jessica nodded. "We're fine," she said. The firefighter looked at the broken wall, then at the crack in the porch beam. "This place could collapse any minute," he said. "You all need to step outside." The agent made a quick decision. "Family, come on," he said. "Out the back door now." Jessica and Amanda scrambled toward the kitchen, past their parents. The dust swirled around them as they moved. Robert and Linda guided them gently. They stepped through the kitchen and out the back door into the cold night. The garden behind the house was quiet. Snow covered the lawn, and the bare branches of the apple tree glistened with frost. The fire engine's light bathed the yard in red and blue. The family gathered near the fence, huddling together for warmth. Amanda shivered. Jessica wrapped her arms around her sister. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're safe." Linda hugged her daughters, and Robert placed a hand on each shoulder. The agent and the firefighters stood nearby, setting up yellow tape around the house and checking the broken porch. One policeman came over to Jessica. "Miss, can you tell us what happened inside?" he asked kindly. Jessica took a deep breath and began to explain. She told him about the red envelopes, the invoice, the broken glass, and the strange figure that dropped the letter. She talked about the FBI and the crash of the wall. The policeman listened and took notes. After she finished, the policeman looked at her with quiet sympathy. "Thank you," he said. "We'll secure the house and investigate. Agents will be back in the morning to collect statements." Jessica nodded. She felt a little more calm, knowing someone was there to help. She looked across at her parents and sister. They were safe outside under the cold stars. For the next hour, the sirens quieted and the emergency vehicles left one by one. A squad car stayed on the street. The firefighters packed up their tools. The agent stayed behind to guard the house. The policeman gave the family blankets and helped them into his car to keep warm while they waited for a neighbor to pick them up. Jessica sat in the patrol car with Amanda in her lap. She held her sister's hand and felt her fingers tremble. She looked out the window at the broken porch and the torn yellow tape. The house looked like a wounded animal, huddled and fragile. When the neighbor arrived, a kind woman named Gloria who lived 2 doors down. The family climbed into Gloria's warm SUV. She wrapped them in more blankets and offered hot chocolate in paper cups. The girls sipped slowly, feeling the warmth spread through them. Gloria drove them to her living room, where a small fire burned in an old stone fireplace. The soft light made the room glow warm gold. Jessica sat on the couch with Amanda and Linda beside her. Robert sat in an armchair, still wearing his coat. Gloria brought in a tray of cookies and set it on the coffee table. For a moment, the family was safe and warm. The fear of the crumbling house and the strange intruders felt like a distant memory. They passed the cookies around and sipped hot chocolate. The girls smiled weakly, and their mother tucked a blanket around their shoulders. Jessica looked at her family. She saw their tired eyes, their drawn faces, and she felt deep love for them. She wanted to tell them how sorry she was for bringing danger to their door. She wanted to promise she would fix everything. She wanted to find a way to end the nightmare. But before she could speak, Gloria's phone rang. She answered and listened, her face growing pale. She covered the mouthpiece and looked at the family. "It's the local power company," she said. "There's been a surge across the street. They need to shut down the lines to fix it. It might cause a spark near your house." Jessica's breath caught. "A spark near our house?" she whispered. Gloria nodded. "They say it could trigger a fire if the lines touch those broken walls." Robert's eyes widened. "We have to warn them." The agent's squad car was still parked across the lawn. Jessica grabbed Amanda's hand. "We have to go back," she said. "We have to stop them." Linda stood quickly, knocking over her blanket. The fireplace crackled. The cookies on the tray sat untouched. The family raced to the door. Outside, the night was still and cold. The SUV's headlights lit the snow. The street was empty except for the squad car and the dark silhouette of their house 2 doors down. The broken porch and shattered window looked like a gaping wound in the night. Jessica's heart thumped. She ran toward the squad car, waving her arms. The officer inside started the engine and turned on the siren. Jessica and her parents piled into the back seat. Gloria sped down the street toward their home. As they neared the house, they saw a bright flash. Sparks flew from the power lines above. The broken front wall glowed with a sudden orange light. Then the lights went out across the street. A hush fell over the snowy road. And with that final burst of light, a new, terrifying danger began to unfold. An extreme event that would change everything again. Jessica's heart slammed as she saw the flash. Sparks from the power lines danced over the broken front wall. A faint orange glow flickered on the shattered glass at the porch. Behind her, the SUV's engine idled, and Gloria's face was pale. "Hold on," Robert shouted, steering the SUV up the drive. The tires crunched on the snow. Jessica and Amanda held onto the seatbacks. They leapt out and ran toward the house. The firefighters' yellow tape snapped in the wind, but no one was guarding the entrance. The squad car was empty. Only the broken porch and dark windows stood before them. Jessica took a breath of cold air. "We need to turn off the power," she said. "It's the only way to stop those sparks." "Where's the meter?" Amanda asked, shivering. Robert pointed to the side of the house. "Behind the bushes," he said. "Keep moving." They slipped around the house, feet sinking in the fresh snow. The power lines overhead crackled softly. Jessica's boots slid on ice. She nearly fell, but Amanda grabbed her arm. They reached the meter box. It was half buried in snow and frost. Robert knelt and wiped the cover with his sleeve. He pried it open and flipped the main switch. The crackling stopped. The night went silent. Jessica pressed her hand to her chest. "I think we got it," she said. They turned back to the front. The porch was dark, but a faint orange glow still shone from inside. Jessica's breath clouded in the air. She felt fear and relief mixed together. Suddenly, a voice called from the window. "Jess? Amanda? Is that you?" It was Agent Collins. He was standing inside by the broken door, flashlight in hand. His coat was dusted with snow. His voice was rough but kind. "Over here," Jessica called. She waved. The agent stepped onto the porch and held out his hand. "Come inside," he said. "You're not safe out here." Jessica and Amanda ran up the steps. Robert and Linda joined them, slipping on the broken wood. Inside, the hall was dim. Dust lay on the floor. The red envelopes still fluttered under the mat. The agent closed the door and secured it with a temporary brace. He wiped his flashlight on his sleeve. "Power's off," he said. "That fire risk is gone." Jessica nodded. "Thank you," she said. Robert looked at the agent. "What now?" The agent gazed at the broken wall and the wide crack in the floor. "We need to get everyone out safely and then call a structural team," he said. "This house is too dangerous to stay in." Linda hugged her coat around her. "Where will we go?" she asked. The agent checked his radio. "There's a shelter at the community center 2 streets over. They have blankets and hot meals." Amanda wiped her cheek. "Can we bring our things?" "Only what you can carry," the agent said. Jessica took a deep breath. She looked at the envelopes under the mat. She thought of the revenge she started. She thought of the apology note from Amanda. She thought of the FBI agents and the crumbling house. She realized her plan had grown into something out of control. She knelt and picked up the first red envelope. It was damp with snow. She opened it and pulled out the paper. For a moment, she read the lines, the hours of babysitting, the gifts, the late nights. Then she let the paper fall to the floor. "We can't stay here," she said. "Let's go to the center and figure it out tomorrow." The agent nodded. He led them through the kitchen into the back door. Snow drifted in at their feet. They stepped into the cold yard. The moon shone on the broken wall, casting long shadows. They walked down the driveway and onto the sidewalk. Each step crunched in the snow. The community center lights glowed warm in the distance. Above them, stars shone bright. Amanda looked up. "Jess." Jessica smiled and squeezed her sister's hand. "We'll be okay," she said. "We have each other." They passed neighbors who offered blankets and nods. Gloria stood outside her SUV, waving goodbye. Jessica waved back. When they reached the center, a volunteer greeted them at the door. She handed them hot cocoa in paper mugs. The scent of cinnamon and chocolate filled the air. Inside, families sat on folding chairs under bright fluorescent lights. Blankets were draped over shoulders. Children colored on paper at a long table. Jessica saw her parents settle into a chair. She sat with Amanda on the end of a row. She watched the other families, half smiling as they talked quietly. The night felt calm at last. For a moment, Jessica let her shoulders relax. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself. The red envelopes and broken walls felt far away. But outside, the wind had not given up. It howled around the building. It shook the windows. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and went out. The center was plunged into darkness. The hum of the generator stopped. A gasp ran through the room. Children cried out. Volunteers scrambled for flashlights. The hot cocoa spilled from mugs. Warm liquid pooling on the floor. Jessica felt her heart freeze. She held Amanda close. She realized that even here they were not safe. And in the blackness, something moved behind the chairs. A soft rattling came from the back door. A long shadow passed across the window blinds. Then, a loud crash echoed from the darkness, a noise so sudden and fierce it shook the walls. And that crash marked a new extreme event that would change everything again.